because we've all been where Elijah finds himself. Well, maybe not in that extreme a situation. Few of us have been hiding in a cave far from home under the threat of death. But we felt that way. I thought about that this week as I watched TV news on Monday with the flooding. The young woman in the green shirt who was stuck in water, trying to swim, unable to get anywhere, finally settling, perched in a tree, waving at a helicopter, waiting, hoping for rescue. I wondered if she felt leaning against that tree trunk, balancing on that branch, as Elijah had felt in his cave. I imagine them both, shaking, breathing shallowly, perched insecurely, wondering, waiting, not even certain what they were waiting for except rescue, whatever that might mean. There sits Elijah. He's already begged God to take his life. In response, God sent an angel who fed him. And when he slept again, he was wakened and sent away. God guided him each step, and after 40 days he came to Mount Horeb. You may remember that Mount Horeb is where Moses saw the burning bush and where he struck rock to get water when the wandering children of Israel were thirsty. One of the biblical writers, known as even refers to Mount Horeb as the place of the Ten Commandments, where the Ten Commandments were given, though we usually think of that as Mount Sinai. Whatever else we might be able to say about Mount Horeb, it's a place that someone might be expected to find God. So there was Elijah, wandering in the wilderness and coming to this cave on Mount Horeb, and he does indeed hear God's voice. God says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" What was Elijah doing here? Perhaps he was at Mount Horeb because he was actively seeking God to find out what the heck he should be doing in this impossible situation. Perhaps he thought that being in this place of God would provide him some protection. He could be safe here because God was mighty and God would not let him down. Maybe he was just hiding out. Elijah doesn't exactly answer what he's doing here. Instead, he recites his journey. He explains that he's been out there fighting the good fight for God, and now he's the only faithful one left, surely the only prophet left, and they're threatening his life. That seems to be enough of an explanation. It doesn't really answer what he's doing there, but there he is. It seems he's seeking safety. So what does God do then? Assure him he's safe? Offer magical protection? No. He instructs him to go out to the mountain where God is going to pass by. So picture Elijah setting aside his fear of death to go out on the mountain and dare to look on God. Of course, the passage doesn't actually tell us that Elijah goes out at that point. So I kind of picture him holed up in the cave waiting to see what happens. And what does happen? Wind. Wind so strong it breaks mountains. Now, most people in many places wouldn't believe that wind can be so strong that it breaks mountains, but we know better. We live in Oklahoma. We're talking tornadic winds, or maybe they're straight line winds, but they're deadly, they're forceful. And there's Elijah hunkered down, no doubt still quaking in his sandals, but God was not in the wind. Then an earthquake. Nothing can be much more disconcerting than the very ground under your feet shaking. What we take for granted every day, the solidity of the earth brought into question, the earth shaking. But God was not in the earthquake either. After the earthquake, fire. A final demonstration of the powers of nature, tremendous destructive forces. God was not in these huge, powerful forces strong enough that they might have provided protection for Elijah. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. It's sometimes translated as a still, small voice. And the translations vary as to whether there's a vocal sound or the whisper of a breeze or simple stillness. And maybe they vary so much because we can't quite imagine the sound, but maybe you've heard it at a time where there's been so much turmoil and then suddenly it ceased. The stillness of an